The following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 4, Language, and addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to identify and use parts of speech such as nouns, verbs, pronouns, adjectives, and adverbs in a range of texts accurately and meaningfully. Learners should be able to use verb tenses and verb forms to express time and mood accurately. Hi guys, in our previous lesson we looked at a number of different parts of speech. We looked at nouns, pronouns, adjectives, interjections, conjunctions and articles. Now can you remember our definition of parts of speech? Parts of speech are the words that make up the sentences we use. We also looked at how to use parts of speech correctly and effectively, and we highlighted the way in which sometimes the same word can be a different part of speech depending on how it is used in a sentence. Today we are going to investigate verbs and adverbs. These tend to be a little more complicated than the other parts of speech, and so we need an entire lesson for them. One thing that you must keep in mind during this lesson is the following. To decide what part of speech a word is, we must always first look at the function it has in the sentence. Here are the outcomes for this lesson. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify a finite verb, identify a non-finite verb, identify an adverb, and understand the function of finite verbs and adverbs. I'm sure you agree with me that the service station was a great place to find examples of and understand parts of speech. Let's return and see if we can find examples of verbs and adverbs. The man steps out of the car. Sarah smiles at the petrol pump attendant. The attendant closes the bonnet. Nick enters the shop. Sam drives away. The man steps out of the car. Sarah smiles at the petrol pump attendant. The attendant closes the bonnet. Jabu enters the shop and Beatrice drives away. All these words are verbs. Can you see that they are all actions? Let's define verb. A verb is a word which indicates action or existence. Let's have another look at the highlighted words. Steps, smiles, closes, enters, and drives. As we said before, they are all actions and therefore verbs. Has your teacher ever told you that for a series of words to be a proper sentence, it must have a finite verb? What about the following sentences? Are they proper sentences? And if so, what are the verbs? What else did we say about verbs when we defined them? Yes, we said that they show action or existence. Do you know what is meant by existence? Yes, being alive. We breathe, our blood flows around our bodies, our hearts beat, we blink our eyes, and our bodies make new cells all the time. Existence means that something or someone is alive, breathing. Being and the state of being alive suggests an action, even if that action is mostly ignored by us, like breathing and our blood circulation. Am, were, and has been. These all show examples of existence and therefore function as verbs. So these are proper sentences after all. We said that for a series of words to be a proper sentence, it must have a finite verb. Now that we are comfortable with what a verb is, what is meant by the term finite verb. A finite verb is a verb which has a subject and a tense. The word finite means that there is a limit to something. So a finite verb will refer to a particular time period. For example, Lindy walks across the forecourt. Can you see that the action of walking is happening right now? In the present tense. Lindy is walking. Lindy has finished walking. The action is over. It is in the past tense. So Lindy walked across the forecourt. Lindy walks across the forecourt. Lindy walked across the forecourt. In each sentence, the verb has a time limit. It refers to a particular time, and so we say it has a tense. When I defined a finite verb for you, I explained that every finite verb must have a tense or time limit and a subject. Do you know what a subject is? It's really very easy to understand. The subject of a sentence is the person or thing which performs the action. Let's take another look at our sentences. We know that the verb walks is in the present tense. Now let's see if we can identify the subject. To find the subject of a verb, we take the verb and ask the question, who or what does the verb? So who or what walks? Quite clearly the answer is Lindy. Lindy is the subject of the sentence. So the verb walks is a finite verb because it has both tense and subject. Can you decide whether or not the verb walked is finite? We have already decided that it is limited in terms of time. The action has passed. So the verb walked is a completed action. But does walked have a subject? Let's ask the question, who or what walked? Clearly, once again, Lindy walked. Lindy is the subject of the sentence. As the verb walked has both tense and subject, it is a finite verb. Let's look at these next examples and see if we can identify the finite verbs and explain why they are finite. I like to use a checkbox. It may help you too. Tabu shows her the oil on the dipstick. First, let's examine the sentence, Tabu shows her the oil on the dipstick. Is there a word in this sentence which indicates an action? Correct. The word shows is an action. The next question we need to ask is this a finite verb? Does it have a tense and a subject? Show is in the present tense. It is happening now. To find the subject, we need to know who or what performed the action. So, who or what shows? The answer is Tabu. So show is a finite verb because it has a subject and tense. Clive gave Tabu the money. What did Clive do? He gave. Gave shows us the action, and so it is a verb. Now, is gave a finite verb? Well, does gave show a tense? When did it happen? He gave Tabu the money is in the past, so gave shows tense. And lastly, to find the subject, we have to ask who gave, and we get the answer Clive. Clive is the subject, so we can say that gave shows tense and has a subject, so it is therefore a finite verb. Beatrice is on duty. This one is a bit tricky. See if you can figure out the answers before I tell them to you. Beatrice is on duty. What is the verb? There is a word that tells us about tense. When is Beatrice on duty? Right now. Which word tells us we can find him on duty now? The word is. So, is a verb. It has tense, present tense. Does it have a subject? We ask, who does the action? And we get the answer, Beatrice. Beatrice is the subject. So, is shows tense and subject. It is therefore a finite verb. You will notice that gave is an action, whereas is shows existence. But both words, gave and is, are verbs. Remember, every sentence needs a finite verb for it to be grammatically complete. This is an important rule of grammar, so try not to forget it. Right, so we know that a finite verb has tense and subject, and that a sentence must have one to make a proper sentence. So what do you think a non-finite verb is? Well, it's still a verb. In other words, it indicates action or existence. So what do you think makes it different from a finite verb? If you guess that a non-finite verb does not have a tense or a subject, you are right. Here's the definition of a non-finite verb. A non-finite verb is a word which indicates an action or existence, but does not have a tense or subject. I find it easier to understand when I look at an example. How about this one? Palesa decided to move the car forward. It has a finite verb, so it is complete. Can you spot the finite verb? Great. Decided is the finite verb as it has a time limit. It has already happened, so it is past tense. It also has a subject, as Palesa decided. Here is a tricky one. If decided is the finite verb, what is the non-finite verb in this sentence? Start by looking for any other verb, any other word that indicates an action in this case. That's right. To move. Now, if we had written Palesa to move the car forward, it would not have made any sense because to move has no time limitation and so has no tense. So you can see that a sentence may contain a finite and a non-finite verb. Just remember though, a sentence may not only have a non-finite verb. Remember this rule. Every sentence must contain a finite verb. So, if finite verbs are so important, what happens when a sentence doesn't have one? Let's look at an example. Driving down the road. Now the word that indicates action is driving. This is a verb in the sentence, but is it a finite verb? It has tense, the action is happening now. But does it have a subject? Who or what is doing the driving? We are not given this information. The sentence does not have a subject. So, in this sentence, driving is a non-finite verb. It indicates an action, has tense, but doesn't have a subject. Here is another example. Patrick to work at the car wash. What words indicate action? That's right. To work. Now, who or what does the verb? Yes, Patrick is the subject of the sentence. But to work is an example of an infinitive. It needs another verb to make it a finite verb. Look at the sentence now. Patrick is to work at the car wash, or Patrick wanted to work at the car wash. The addition of the finite verbs is and wanted make this sentence complete, and I'm sure you would agree that it sounds a lot better. Now that we've discussed the differences between finite and non-finite verbs, I'm sure you'll find it easier to identify them in a sentence. But what about the word that gives more information about the verb, the adverb? Would you be able to pick it out of a sentence? Why don't you try? The old vehicle stopped quickly. From what we have learned today, can you identify the finite verb? Yes, it is stopped. What word in this sentence gives us more information about how the vehicle stopped? Yes, the word quickly. This gives us more information about the verb. It tells us how the vehicle stopped. So quickly is an adverb. Here's the definition of an adverb. An adverb is a word which supplies more information about a verb. It adds to the verb. Lindy walked confidently across the forecourt. Can you find the finite verb and the adverb in this sentence? Here is a hint. Try to find the finite verb before you look for the adverb. Lindy walked confidently across the forecourt. Did you get it? Good. The word walked tells us about an action or existence, so it is the verb. And a finite verb because it has tense and a subject. But how did Lindy walk? Yes. Lindy walked confidently. So the word confidently provides us with more information about the verb. So confidently is an adverb. It is interesting to note that most, but not all, adverbs end in the letters ly. If you see a word which ends in ly, check to see if it is providing more information about the verb. If it is, the word is an adverb. Here is a summary table of what we have learned today. Verbs indicate action or existence. Finite verbs are required in every sentence. Finite verbs have tense and a subject. Non-finite verbs can't exist on their own in a sentence. You can only use a non-finite verb in a sentence if the sentence already has a finite verb. And adverbs are the words that give us more information about verbs. Identify the finite verb, adjective, and adverb in the following sentence. The new petrol tanker hooted loudly. Parts of speech are extremely important, and if you use them correctly, they will really help you to express yourself more clearly. There are some other aspects of grammar which will help you too. Join me next time for explanations and examples of some of them. Till then, goodbye.